Thank you all for coming. My name is Brandon Glosson, and I will be your host for tonight. If you haven't had a chance, be sure to grab some food. We've got Torchy's Tacos in the back. I've been a member of the Lisk community for a couple years now. I've done several meetups in San Antonio, and we've been wanting to come to Austin for quite a while now, and so finally we've made it, and we get to present Lisk to some folks in Austin. As a result of me having done a lot of meetups and been a member of the community, Lisk has made me one of their official ambassadors. So as part of that, we get some benefits, which one is a bunch of Lisk Austin t-shirts. So if you want a Lisk t-shirt, be sure to grab one or two, give one to a friend. Do you realize they are Euro sizes though? So if you wear a medium, you're going to want to grab a large. If you wear a large, you're going to grab an extra large on that. So for the last 2 years, it's been an amazing journey with Lisk. Seeing how much it has grown from the very early days. When these guys first started, there was literally one person coding the Lisk blockchain. They had a test net that was so rickety, people would stay up all night long trying to make sure this thing was working. Developers pulling extended shifts, just everybody banding together to try to make sure everything was working okay. And we've come a huge distance from that point. Now, just recently, Lisk they've released their version 1.0 of their core software, which is kind of the engine of the entire ecosystem. They have an absolutely gorgeous web wallet and mobile wallet now. Instead of having one coder, the company now has over 50 employees, and they are on track to make 100 employees sometime probably early next year, I'm guessing. And so it's just really they've lit everything on fire, and the level of productivity, the code quality, everything just keeps getting better and better. And we're at the point now where the vision is starting to take shape, and you can really see where things are going, and you can see the quality that is starting to go into everything they've done. So for the agenda for tonight, I'm going to give a high-level overview of Lisk and the different components. And then we're going to have different folks highlight different pieces of it through demonstrations and things they've been working on. So first I'll give the high level, and then you just saw Jure Makielson. He is going to give a demonstration of there's Phil. He's going to give a demonstration or a talk on the Musti music ecosystem project, which basically aims to put artists and music and intellectual property all on the blockchain, and basically try to make the musician and the artist more the center of the music industry as opposed to some of what's going on now. After that, we're going to have Bob Engel. He is a member of Blockspace, and he's going to give a demonstration of Lisk's web wallet, which is Lisk Hub. It has a lot of nice user interface and some good features to it. After Bob, Tony Mornello is going to do a demonstration of the Lisk Core API and some programs that he's written using that API. I'm going to give a demonstration of Lisk Commander. I may touch upon Lisk Elements as well. Fortunately, I had a laptop go out this weekend, so I lost a little bit of time and data, so I'm going to be a little abbreviated on what I'm doing on that part. After that, we're going to have some audience participation. We're giving away 50 lists, so if we have time, we may give folks a chance to say, hey, here's a cool blockchain use case that I'm excited about, and then whoever volunteers, maybe we'll give some lists to those folks. If we're running out of time, then maybe we'll just do a drawing, but I think we may be okay on time for that. And then at the very end, we can do a question and answer. So we've got some really core Lisk community members here. We have Stellar Dynamic. He's one of the official Lisk delegates as well as a Lisk ambassador. We have Tony T, who will be speaking. He's really been writing Lisk tools like crazy. He's done a lot of development of what Lisk has to work on. We've got several members from Blockspace, and they've been really a great community outreach program for Lisk. They have gone to conference after conference, sponsored event after event, and now they're even starting to get into the side chains and some of that as well. So they've been very active too. So yeah, we've got some great community members here that if I can't answer a question, there's a bunch of other people who certainly can. So the Lisk's main mission is to make blockchain accessible and make it accessible to the masses. What they want to do is lower barriers to entry, and they want to inspire and support innovators. And they're doing that through a variety of ways. The three key pieces of trying to make blockchain accessible to everyone is the SDK, which we call the sidechain development kit, not software, but sidechain development kit, the user interface, and education. So I believe if they can place emphasis on these three areas, they're going to make a whole lot of ground towards making Lisk and blockchain more accessible. So going back, the sidechain development kit, it's a combination of several different products, including Lisk Core, Lisk Commander, Lisk Elements, and these are going to provide all the tools that developers need to develop their own sidechains and develop projects on top of the Lisk blockchain. Lisk, the user interface is going to, they believe that if blockchain is not usable, then the masses will never adopt it. They need to hopefully not even really realize they're interacting with a blockchain for people to adopt, start using blockchain technologies. And the third pillar is education, and Lisk has spent a lot of resources and effort on developing an educational platform that they call Lisk Academy. If you have a chance, and we'll see a little bit of it, but go to lisk.io and then look for the Lisk Academy tab, and they have some great resources on what is blockchain, what are its use cases, how does it work, what are the different pieces of blockchain, such as from hashing to consensus to you name it. They've got most of it covered, and they're even building on from there. All right, does anybody recognize this? CryptoKitty. So CryptoKitties was an application, or is an application built on the Ethereum network. It's really cool. It's gotten really popular. But one thing it has managed to do unintentionally is to demonstrate the need for scalability on blockchain. At its peak, I think CryptoKitties was using maybe 10% of all the transactions on the Ethereum network, just that one application. And things were really bogging down and transactions were getting really expensive. So Ethereum they're coming up with some scalability solutions as well, but Lisk has its own scalability solutions too that it's working on, that it's hoping to avoid what CryptoKitties had. It's got kind of a first mover. You have some bumps and bruises along the way. So when blockchain came out, everything was on one blockchain. All of the data, all the transactions. In the case of projects like Ethereum that work on smart contracts, all the smart contracts, everything goes on that one chain. So you're sharing that chain with every other player in the ecosystem revolving around that chain. And that creates some issues. And one is that all these applications you're putting data on in one place, you start to end up with a very large chain. And these one applications can actually influence the availability of the chain and the project for other applications too. So you have this lack of separation can cause some issues. So what Lisk is, their solution to the problem, one of the solutions, is what they call sidechains. With sidechains, every application is going to get its own blockchain with its own nodes. In this way, if all the data goes onto the sidechain, it's not putting data onto the other people's chains. If one particular project is using a ton of resources, it's not taking away at least as many resources from these other projects that are on their own chain and have their own nodes. So they have a lot of separation between the different chains. So we talked about the Lisk SDK, the sidechain development kit, and these are kind of the three major components of it. We have the Lisk Core, we have Lisk Commander, and we have Lisk Elements. Now Lisk core, they are kind of the heart or the engine of the entire project. That's the software that runs on the Lisk nodes. So if somebody's running a server that's processing these transactions, they are running Lisk core. It takes care of the person-to-person, the networking between the nodes. It takes care of the block creation, like the people who run this are, that's what's forging the blocks. It takes care of the block validations. It provides for the consensus rules. It offers up an API, an application programming interface, so that people can interact with it. It uses fully atomic block writes, which means once a transaction is being written to the database, it's either going to write completely on the database and write the whole thing, or not at all, which keeps you kind of ending up with transactions sort of half and half and messing up the chain. And they keep adding features. One of the more recent features is they've added the ability to include 64-byte data fields as part of all the transactions. So now you have the capability to start adding hashes and extra transaction data to the transactions. And a lot of the community members are already, just with that little bit of flexibility, they're starting to come up with some really neat projects. I talked about it providing for the consensus rules, and the consensus rules of Lisk are something they call delegated proof of stake. So, we came out with Bitcoin initially with proof of work, where people were solving these hashes to try to be the person who produces the valid block. After that came along proof of stake, which basically however many tokens you have, that was kind of it weighed upon your ability, your likelihood of forging a block. On Lisk, what they do is they allow you to delegate your proof of stake. So let's say you have 100 tokens, you're going to actually vote on people that you want to be the block producers. And so Lisk has 101 block producers. They operate in a round-robin fashion. So number one goes, number two goes, number three goes, and at the end of the round, if everybody's gone, then they randomize and start all over again. So they are elected by the token holders. Each token holder gets 101 votes, and whichever 101 people have the most votes, they're the folks who are forging the blocks. Now, other people can still run nodes, and those nodes do actually participate in the validation process of Lisk, but as far as being able to sign blocks, it's these 101 people who get to do it. Now that offers some advantages, and one advantage is that it's fairly quick. You don't have to deal with thousands of computers to keep track of these databases. You can speed up your data transfers a good bit by having less people writing on the blocks. Now, the people who are forging the blocks, they are incentivized. Every block they forge, they get several lists to keep for themselves for keeping up the node. So if someone fails to keep up a node, maybe their servers go down, or they behave maliciously, then they can be unvoted by the voters, and then the next person with the highest votes will take their place. And we actually had someone not too long ago who somehow just disappeared, and their node went red and wasn't forging blocks, and probably within a week or so, that person fell off of the forging list and was replaced by another delegate. So it works to keep the network up. The Lisk network has been rock solid. So Lisk Elements, that is a collection of libraries that are useful for, or it is a library, or a collection of libraries that are useful for interacting with the Lisk blockchain. So it's the things like, how do you create a transaction? How do you sign transactions? How do you broadcast transactions? What are different constants? It's all of the code that you need to interact with Lisk, or the developers needs to interact with Lisk, or it's a head start for them to be able to use on their own projects. A lot of these things that you're going to be doing, it's repetitive, and so there's a huge ability to reuse Lisk elements, reuse the code of Lisk elements in various projects. So developers are going to be able to take Lisk elements, customize it to their desire. It's very modular, so they don't even have to download all of or use all of Lisk elements. They can just use certain modules from Lisk elements and make their own module for something else. But it's kind of the code for interacting with the blockchain. So in the big scheme of things, you have Lisk core, which is, like I said, the heart and the engine. Then you have Lisk elements, which is the code through which these other products interact with Lisk. So Lisk Commander is, they're using Lisk Elements code to do what it does, and Lisk Explorer, which is Blockchain Explorer, is using Lisk Elements to interact with Core, and so with the web wallet. So you can see how the Elements, it's right next to Core, and then these other projects make use of it to get to Core. So Lisk Commander, this image is actually incorrect now. They've since changed their the platform that Lisk Commander is built on, but it does much the same thing. It's intended to be the command line interface for Lisk. So for developers who don't want to mess with the GUI web wallet, they want more advanced functions, they want to maybe use some scripting with some of these functions, they're going to be able to use Commander to accomplish these things without actually having to start coding everything out. So it's kind of a shortcut to coding is one of the ways I like to look at it. So if you want to create an account, instead of building out a function in JavaScript about create account, and that's fairly easy to do with Lisk Elements, but it's even easier to do with Lisk Commander. You can do that, or maybe you want to create 100 accounts and write them all to a file. You can do this with Lisk Commander. If you want to create 100 accounts and then send all those 100 accounts from Lisk, you could also do that with some scripting and Bash or in Lisk Commander as well. So. It's just intended to be a little more developer friendly. In the future, they've got some really neat things that it's planned to be able to do. One thing is for when a developer wants to launch their own sidechain, they're going to be able to just basically type in generate Genesis block, and it will actually make the first block of their blockchain with Commander. Or maybe they want to start creating nodes. Maybe they'll be able to do that through Commander. It's just going to make it really easy to accomplish some things that would require a lot more heavy lifting without the Commander. So that's what Commander's all about. The next pillar of accessibility is the user interface. Lisk has spent a lot of time and effort on trying to make things as easy to use as possible, as pretty as possible, as simple as possible. They have some amazing documentation throughout their website. If you check it out through the Lisk Academy, or even the documentation for all these different products, from Core to Elements to Commander to Hub, it's just really, if you check it out, it's really first-rate documentation. But by doing these things, that's how we're going to bring blockchain to the masses, by making things super simple, super easy to operate. So Lisk Hub is Lisk's web wallet. It's an all-in-one solution for managing your Lisk. It's what allows your average user to interact with the rest of the Lisk ecosystem. They're going to be able to do things like do Lisk transactions, check balances, vote with Lisk Hub. Its whole focus is on simplicity and security, and it's a very pretty, very useful web wallet that Lisk has put together. It took a while to get it out, but they came out with a really great product. Something that works hand in hand with that is Lisk Mobile. So Lisk Mobile is your mobile device wallet. So it does most of what Lisk Hub does, but it's just on your phone. It's a little bit more simplified, but when you're on the go and you need to check balances, then you're able to do that from your iOS or your Android wallet as well. One thing I neglected on Lisk Hub, they're still adding features to it. One of the really neat features that they're going to add is a decentralized exchange. So you're going to have all these side chains, and you're going to have a decentralized exchange built right into your main wallet that you're going to be able to deal with and trade on all these other side chain tokens. And the other thing they're going to add to it is an ICO center. So even before you launch your mainnet, you're going to be able to get on a wallet and register a sidechain, issue tokens on your sidechain, and I believe distribute them initially, which will be kept track on the main chain until you're ready to move your project over to the sidechain. So it's got a lot of stuff in store for it as well. So Lisk Mobile also has some upcoming features. They've just released it probably a couple months ago, and they're continuing to add things like night mode, face recognition, being able to bookmark different accounts that you want to follow. Let's say you've got 5 different addresses that are yours. You're going to be able to follow them all with your one mobile device fairly easily. All right. The last pillar of Lisk's accessibility strategy is education, and we touched upon this with the Lisk Academy, but it is intended to be a best-in-class education experience. It combines a lot of written material with a lot of multimedia materials, so you can have videos in addition to a bunch of written content as well. And Lisk has recently formed a partnership with the London Blockchain Labs, and so that's a collection of universities in London. Their whole goal in this project is to expand the Lisk Academy and to perform research on the DPoS consensus. So I wanted to just bump out of the presentation real quick. We can take a quick look at the Lisk Academy, what's on there. But you can get an idea initially over on this left-hand side. You have an intro, what is the Lisk Academy, how to get started with Lisk. You have some basic information on what's blockchain. You have a section for blockchain for kids. How blockchain works really starts getting into the weeds with peer-to-peer networking, the cryptography, digital signatures, what nodes are, how hashing works, consensus protocols. And all of this has a ton of written material, as well as most of it tends to have videos as well. So that's the Lisk Academy, and they're continuing to add to that. I suspect in the future that they're going to start adding even more Lisk-centric stuff as well, especially once the side chains are out. You're going to be able to learn more about how to do this through the Academy too. There's even a section on the business use cases for blockchain. So if you're interested in starting a blockchain-related business, definitely check out this section too. Now in the future for the Academy, in addition to those things, they're actually going to gamify things. So you're going to be able to sort of play games while learning blockchain, and they're going to lead to an accreditation program. So you're going to say, I'm Lisk Academy certified, and that's going to provide you some credibility, like, hey, I know the Lisk blockchain application platform. And so if you're a developer trying to get on with another project, maybe something that you want to say that you've done, or if you're trying to pitch your own project, it just gives more credibility that you know what you're doing. I think that about wraps up what I had. We've covered the 3 different pillars of Lisk, from the sidechain development kit, from the user interface to the Academy. That's basically it in a high-level overview of Lisk in a nutshell. So now we're going to bring on Musti, or Zhur Mokulson from the Musti blockchain sidechain project, and he's going to talk a little bit about the Musti ecosystem. If you just hang on me 1 second now, I'll get Zhur back on the line. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Let's see. Are you able to share a screen, or?
I'm trying.
There were 3 dots in the upper right hand that I clicked on, and then it had an option to share screen.
Do you see something? Do you see a share screen currently?
No, I just see you. Let me try to stop sharing on my end. Let me see if I can stop sharing on my end. All right, now give it a shot. Hey, it's looking, yeah, there we go. There I am. You got it, you're on.
Yes, okay.
I'm going to turn the computer on, maybe you can see, can you see everybody?
No, I only see my own screen currently.
All right.
Yes, now I can see everybody.
Oh, okay, let me put you back then. Great.
Did you see the presentation right now?
Yes. If you make that full screen, then we're good to go.
Okay. Yes. Oh, then I understand. So hello. Thank you. Meetup. Like last night we were at the Lisk Meetup in Amsterdam, and before that we were in Rotterdam. Yeah, it's awesome that we are seeing so much progress currently. Do you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I would like to tell you a little bit about our project, what we are currently doing, what we would like to do in the future, and how that relates to Lisk and why we chose the Lisk platform. So I have a short presentation. Actually, we would like, I'll just tell you a short overview about what we are going to tell. So, what is Moosty? What do we want to change within the music industry, and why did we choose for Lisk? And actually, what are our next steps? So, what is Moosty? Actually, we would like to be what Lisk is for the blockchain ecosystem, we would like to be for the music world. So, what it says is that Lisk is on a protocol layer which will be like the foundation of all blockchain, all kinds of blockchain applications in the future. We would like to be that layer for the music industry. And you can imagine that all kinds of applications should be able to tap into the Moosty sidechain. So we would like to create a protocol layer. We also create a hub for musicians. That would not only be, we would not be the only hub for musicians, but also other people can build hubs for our sidechain. We can build apps on top of that, and of course we would like to create a community of developers that are going to build applications on top of our platform. For the music industry, we would like to create, we would like to empower artists. So independence is an important thing, and new collaboration. So we empower artists by giving them more independence, and we would like to introduce them to a whole new way of working in the blockchain era, where you can make use of so many new open source tools, which we actually personally also don't know about what is going to happen. So that means we would like to empower musicians. We would like to separate the incumbent industry from the artist. So currently you have Spotify that directly contracts musicians. Therefore, they are avoiding that there is a record label in between Spotify and the artist. But the other thing is that they are actually trying to commit those artists to their platform. And we would like to separate the data the artist has to upload somewhere and also the rights from the larger parties in the industry, like from Spotify. So we separate content from service, actually. Of course, like the infrastructure of blockchain will change so many things for the administrative efforts of musicians, which they currently actually don't have any control over. We know artists that perform in another country and get paid months or even a year later. So that infrastructure of payment will change totally 180 degrees or 360 degrees, as you call it, if you are going to start with the blockchains. You could say it's not necessarily, you do not need a music blockchain for these kind of automations. And that's also not the only thing we would like to create. So it's not about only payments, but in the end it's about automating almost 80% of administrative efforts for musicians. And on top of that, creating open source tooling for them. But actually, there are so many things that we cannot foresee what is going to happen, what we can build, and what other people will build. So there, we know, and also Lisk, I guess, that there are so many new projects going to start on top of Lisk and also on top of our sidechain that will probably also surprise us. So, and what we are going to change is that you have current roles in the industry, in the music industry, where you have large record labels with a lot of power, large publishers which are doing a lot of work that can be automated. We have large streaming services like Spotify, and the power does not lie with the artist. But the artist still needs all those people, or at least needs a lot of those skill sets. So we need producers, we need promoters, we need somewhere to publish, we need someone who helps us recording a song or to create a song. We need those streaming services. So it's not that we are going to try to take on Spotify or something, but all those roles within the industry are going to change, and that's going to happen partly through blockchains. And the question is, are they going to be open source blockchains like the publicly decentralized blockchains like this is building, or is, for example, a Spotify trying to build something like how the banks call it DLT, distributed ledger technology, which are actually more privatized blockchains. So that's, we think rules are changing, and we can create an ecosystem, but we also don't know what's going to happen within that industry. So we'll have to see. So why did we choose Lisk? Actually, we chose Lisk because nowadays, and also since the internet grew big, it's you're not trying to compete with one company. We are trying to compete with all other blockchain ecosystems. And in the end, there might be a multitude of ecosystems, but if you're going to create something really big, if you're trying to really make use of all the development power on the world, actually, you should try to join an ecosystem that is trying to get all those people together in which you believe. So that's why we had to choose for one ecosystem, because we do not want to build that blockchain foundation. We would like to be like one layer of abstraction higher. Lisk is going to solve so many things for us that we do not want to talk about, or actually we should talk about it, but we do not want to invent them. Let them invent it, or let other blockchains invent it, and let Lisk integrate them. And for us, we are going to use that to create a use case. So we really believe in the ecosystem approach that on Lisk, complementary innovations are going to be built, and we would like to be able to bootstrap those innovations too, and we would like to be part of that movement. Then, because Lisk focuses on UX, we think that that's one of the most important things you have to do in the current world to make things accessible, and that accounts for blockchain also. Then you have the JavaScript thing. Why try to learn a new language if you can give a large community of JavaScript developers the tools to start building applications? And we also really like the fact that they have currently a company in Berlin from which they are actually a little bit centralized creating this. That means that they are able to guide their efforts in a specific direction. And in the end, the ultimate vision is that everything is decentralized. But we currently also very much like the fact that they are a little bit centralized and create focus with that, because it's easier to innovate at this moment in a direction that you want with the centralized system, because we are building, or they are building actually, a foundation that needs to be secure. And yeah, we are really liking the approach they are taking, the fact that they focus on UX and focus on JavaScript and doing it from Berlin. Also create a more European flavor. We think it's the fact that they are currently working from Berlin. Let me go a little bit further, because I would like to tell something about, they are operating from Berlin, but they announced a Lisk center in Utrecht. They announced it yesterday, and that's part of our next steps as Roosty. We would like to be more, take more part within this community and to help them build their community. So that Lisk center in Utrecht is also a little bit of an experiment for them to see if a community is able to really get things going in 2019. So they are planning to attract talent in Utrecht who is willing to take a seat in their office and just try to develop their own projects. And as Moosty, we are the first ones who got the passes to start there in January, and they are probably opening it up in February or March, hopefully. What we are trying to do as Moosty over there is try to attract more and more people, help with the startups, try to set up collaborations between different countries, between Brandon and ours, between people who are working separately in the Netherlands, to build tools for the community, to organize the meetups and hackathons, and also, and that's for us, that's the most important thing. Now we are able to make use of a foundation of Lisk, a large name in the blockchain community, to really build business collaborations. So from that Lisk Center, we are going to invite people, we are going to talk more with the business, more with the music industry, and try to make that a hub where new businesses, or where current businesses and new businesses are built, and current businesses can be invited to create new use cases. So those are the next steps. That we are really focusing on community building, because we also are not yet able to use an SDK or something like that. But when we are able to, the community platform, we are firstly joining the Lisk Center and experimenting like we're doing right now with the main chain of Lisk. We developed some tools, and we hope to do that more often too. But after that, in the next year, during the next year, we'd like to raise an ICO and prepare that a couple of months to really build a robust team which would be able to actually build this platform, because currently we have a team that's very skilled, but obviously too small to really build a platform like we are trying to achieve. And actually, because Lisk is not yet releasing an SDK, we still have to wait some time. For us, it's not. For us, that is the opportunity actually to build a better team, a better collaborations already within the music industry before the actual SDK is released. We would like to focus next in 2019. We're going to focus on the Lisk Center and building the community and try to build collaborations with developers that are already within the Lisk community. And next to that, we are going to prepare an ICO and keep experimenting. We will put out our new website and also we'll put out a test app. But we are, because we are with a small team, we need to divide our efforts currently. So those are plans actually, and we hope that we are going to do a lot more, and that we can finally also get more collaborations within the Lisk community that is currently already there. Because yesterday we spoke to Andrew, for example, who has built a tool for Lisk. We also built another tool for Lisk, and we see a lot of similarities between them. We think, how can we collaborate? How can we make this even better? How can we make this work from the same source? And not only to build a tool, but also to build those collaborations between developers, and maybe even in the end, not only build a music platform, but work on different projects with all developers from Lisk. But that's more like a utopia, probably. But I guess that's one of the reasons that we are still, or that we are working on this, is because we believe in blockchain and we believe in the possibilities for the music industry. Although we do not know actually what is going to happen next year or the year after. So that was it. Thank you. Are there questions? And well, this is the tool we built, but I think it's not necessary to go in depth to that. Right.
You guys got any questions?
Questions? If you want to learn more about the Moose project, you can go to moosecoin.io, and they have a white paper on there, and it kind of lays out their vision of how they're trying to build a decentralized organization for musicians on their website as well. Thank you, Zur. I know it must be getting late. What are you, about 2:30 in the morning now?
Yes, I have to get up within 2.5 hours, I guess.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to share more about your project with us tonight. So thank you once again, and I'll see you online soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for organizing this and also inviting me. So I'll talk to you later.
All right. Online. I'm going to leave the screen share on just in case you want to sit in. Otherwise, we don't feel obligated. We're going to have a couple more speakers, and thank you once again.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. So next we have Bob Engel. Oh, hey, Zur, I'm going to have to, well, I'm going to leave you up. Well, yeah, I can leave the computer here. There you go. Oh, I'm sorry. You need that space. Yeah, maybe put it right there. That's all right.
There it is. So I'm Bob Englund. I'm for Block Space. We do education all over the place. And I've been asked to do the thing with the Lisk Hub. The Lisk Hub is super easy. This is actually Lisk.io. This is the main page you go to when you go to Lisk.io. Everything I talk about today, you'll be able to go over here to Lisk Academy, and you click on Getting Started with Lisk, and it'll walk you through it. It even gets into some more technical details about how the Lisk IDs work, how they're set up, and the programming that they use to do that. So, in order for you to get involved in the Lisk ecosystem, you have to have a Lisk ID. In order to have a Lisk ID, you have to have a Lisk wallet. Easiest one to get is this one on Lisk Hub. You click Lisk Hub. I'm not going to go through, of course, I'm not going to sit here and load it. I already have it loaded. But you go, in this case, it automatically knows that I'm on a Mac, so it asks me for a download for a Mac. So I already have it downloaded. We're not going to go through all that. I don't know how long it would have taken if I had done that. So you come to this page. Of course, I already have a couple Lisk accounts, so if I need to, I just enter my passphrase. Passphrase of 12 completely random words that create a mnemonic that then creates the thing, just like almost all of the wallets work this similar way. In this case, I click on my Lisk ID, create a Lisk ID. Now, it is recommended that if you do what I'm about to do, you do it when you have plenty of time. Maybe have a nice Chardonnay, a Brie. Sit down with nobody else around, because you don't want anybody to know any of the information that I'm about to show you. So this ID I'm about to create is completely worthless, because you'll all know what the passphrase is, but it's over. So in order to create your Lisk ID, you literally take your finger and start moving it around. And I just keep on moving my finger around on the thing, and it'll eventually create this icon. Now I know this icon, I can memorize it, I can screenshot it, I guess, if I want to. That way I know that this is mine. Whenever I go into this thing, I know that I'm in my account. Then, once I've got this much of it done, I click this Get Passphrase. Your passphrase is issued to access your Lisk ID. I say I'm responsible to keep my passphrase safe. No one can reset it, not even Lisk. So I take this thing, I slide it over here so that I understand. And it gives me a passphrase, and it says, well, it wants me to reveal it. So then I slide it over here. And there's a passphrase, which is now completely worthless because you all know what it is. Okay? But I even thought about, what should I do, like a little thing and throw like 10 Lisk on there, and then the first person to like create their own wallet and get on there and transfer it from there to their wallet.
That's a hint.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that, but I'm saying maybe in the future I'll do that. So I would write this down on a piece of paper, a good old-fashioned piece of paper. I will hide it so that not even my wife knows where it's at. I have a son who lives far away, and I told him, if anything happens to me, there's this book. No one else knows about this book. I'll tell you where it's at. It looks like a normal book that nobody cares about. And if you look in that book, it will have all of my passcodes for all of my accounts. So, luckily he lives far away, and I know he won't tell his mom. So, in the event that anything happens to me, yes, somebody can get all my Lisk and then give it to his mom, which he may or may not do. I don't know. But yes, it's safe. I've written it down. Once I've written it down, like, this is going to actually be worthless because I'm going to write it down, and I'm not going to memorize it. I have it, then it's going to ask me, uh-oh, what did I do? I don't remember what the first word was. Does anybody remember what the first word? What? Forward. It was forward? So forward was the first word. And what was after the word crash? We didn't write it down.
That would be awful.
So, which one is it? Is it Latin, head, farm, or head?
Latin.
Let's try Latin. It is. So, we got it right, we're in. Now we'll never remember that again, and we'll never be able to get into this account again. Okay? So, at this point you have this. Now this is your public ID. The other one was your private ID. That's what you have to get into your account. You have to have in order to, this is the one you give to people to say like, hey, send me some Lisks, right? So this is the one you can give out. Anybody can send it. If they have this number, they can send you Lisk. The only thing is you can't ever get any of that Lisk unless you had the passphrase, which we now know none of us remember. So that's worthless. But that's okay. We can move on from there, right? Because I wasn't going to put money in this one anyway. Okay, so we got all this. I can get my dashboard at this point. I'll just click this, and it's going to go into my dashboard. Now this is my actual wallet. It comes up with wonderful little Twitters and Lisk news and stuff like this on this side. It always shows like how Lisk Bitcoin is working on here. It's gone up actually quite a bit in the last day. It was really low and it's starting to come up about 18%. I think it's come up just today. Faster than Bitcoin's coming up. But so we have our dashboard here. This right here will say any transaction you've had. So if I did put 10 Lisk into this account, then it would be sitting right here. And it would say, so I put 10 Lisk in the account. After you first do your account, it's going to ask you to, will you send like 1/10 of a Lisk so that Lisk can confirm that you're really there. And so you basically pay Lisk 1/10 of a Lisk in order to show that this is actually your account, you're using it, you know how to use it. And then this will always come up in here. So as you go through, you can click on the See Transaction. It'll show you all your transaction history. Did somebody send me my Lisk on this day? And everything. And of course, the other person knows it too. This is the great thing about the blockchain is you can't say, oh, you didn't pay me. Because guess what? They can look at where they paid you to. And they can show it to everybody else that they paid you. So that's that. You could also sit here on this part here. You could actually add other Lisk IDs you have. So the great thing about the Lisk wallet, that's this one. And first of all, I want to say this: you have to download this one. They actually discontinued the online wallet because there's been some security breaches in other people's wallets that are online. So they've actually just shut it down. So this is the only way you can use it, or the Lisk Mobile now. Because they didn't want to even, before any problem happened, they weren't going to have that. So they actually shut down the regular online wallet. If you know about the news where like, so all these Bitcoin wallets got hacked.
Well, it was actually even scarier than just the fact that the wallets got hacked. They actually were able to replace the domain name server or something. It wasn't an attack on the wallets directly, but it was an attack on any sort of web-based service where basically they switched the domain. That the hacker put a hacked wallet at a domain and then used the domain name servers to switch where you would go to when you went to that wallet. So if you went to My Ethereum wallet, you would actually end up at the hacker's My Ethereum wallet, but that had been done on a infrastructure level of like your provider. Domain, like at a domain level, the domain name service level attack. So like, that's scary. But that's why you can't have web wallets anymore.
Yeah. Your browser would actually say My Ethereum Wallet on it, like the actual site, which you really wouldn't be there.
Yeah, you're actually in the hacker's world and handing him everything and just handing him all your stuff. You know. So yeah, they got rid of that. This is the way you do it. I can turn this off. I can turn it on. I can turn my computer off. Take off the web, and people can't get into my stuff. Okay, so this is basically a hard wallet, similar to a hard wallet at this point. So yeah, so you do all your activities. So this is the basic dashboard, and this is just about you and your accounts and your money going in and out. You can go down here. So the wallet is going to be just about you sending and receiving your stuff. So when you click on wallet, it's going to go here. This is where you actually no activity we have. There's not going to be any activity in this movie. But so I can send or request my money back and forth. This is basically my little bank account, my checkbook that I go back and forth on. We go into delegates. Now, it's not going to show up. I'm going to have to go down to settings, take them. So this is I think it's come up on mine because I've already changed the settings on it. Usually when you first come into this and you've just loaded it, it will not show delegates. You actually have to go into settings and actually have to click on that, and I'll show you that in a second. You can click on where it'll actually have where you can vote. Probably don't want to start voting unless you have about 500 Lisk in your account, because you're probably not going to get anything for your votes. So We got this basic thing, and then it'll just go through here. Who do I want to vote for? It costs like 1 Lisk to vote for the first, 33, something like that. So I go through here and I pick number 105. Where's number 105? Why do I want to pick 105? If he's still there, because it's blockspace.io, so of course I want to vote for that one. So yeah, you want to vote for that one right away because we're trying to move that one over here. We're moving this guy out, and I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not allowed to be doing that stuff. So, but I'm just saying, when you start voting, that's what's happening. His idea is that's the voting. You want the top 101. You see that they're the productive ones. They're productive ones because they're the ones who actually get a forged bricks, and they actually get paid in Lisk for it. Okay. So the side chain is not working yet. It's a coming soon thing, but ideally, what's going to happen eventually is you're going to be able to start your own side chain from this wallet. So at some point you're like, oh, I have my great business idea that I'm going to have not cats, I'm going to have dogs. And I'm going to have it where people can make their own dog on my side chain. Crazy as that sounds, it's probably going to work faster than most other side chains are going to work. But so I'm going to create my own like puppy farming game on my side chain. And this is where you'll actually be able to start that and get to at least when you get ready to get to the ICO level, and then work from there. Okay. So like I said, there's the settings, and this is what usually happens. Like I said, when you first go in there, it's not going to show the delegates. You have to come in here and you have to decide on what you're going to do here. It's going to time me out in 3 minutes. So I have this on so I could turn this off for a second, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm just going to do reset it. But it gives you 10 minutes, and then it's going to automatically turn off your wallet if you don't ask it to keep you in there. Other features, delegate features, you can turn these on or off. I got it on right now, that's why it showed delegates. But usually when you first come in here, it won't show that. You're going to have to actually click on that. Now it gets rid of it on the side here. So the only way I can vote is if I've clicked on that, and then I can get into there. And of course I'm using it all in US dollars, but I could change it over to euros if I want. And that's pretty much the whole wall. If you ever need help, it's right here. And like I said, if you go to lisk.io/academy, or you just go to list.io and click on Academy, get started with Lisk, it's actually going to show you everything I just told you. It's going to get you started on everything else. And once you get in here, you just play around with it. You're going to find everything you need. Is there any questions?
What's the hate for more minors?
Huh? It's not. They just moved somebody out that we liked. They just moved into that spot, and it knocked out somebody else that we wanted to be in that spot. So
yeah, he's a.
So I'm not allowed to campaign. I have no hate for them. I don't know them. I'm just saying there was somebody else we want to be in that spot named Blockspace.
It's a zero-sum game, man. Somebody's got to come out.
So somebody's got to go, and we don't want the one after them to go. So we want them to go. So that's all. Any other questions?
Is it compatible with any hardware walls?
I don't know.
They actually did just add, well, so they have 2 third-party implementations. They're by delegates, so they are high quality and worthy, trustworthy, because people could ruin their reputation if they choose to, be malicious with it. But there is a implementation on Ledger and on Trezor already. But I think the Berlin studio is actually going to do one of their own implementations as well.
It's not update actually. 1.7
Oh, really?
will be. I think I'm not sure if it'll have Trezor just yet, but I know 1.7 has Ledger support.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, basically there is some hardware wallet support already, and it's almost there for the official end.
Yeah, I was originally asked who I want to do Lisk Hub or Lisk Mobile. Lisk Mobile just hasn't done. I can't talk about Lisk Mobile for 15 minutes. It's pretty much way faster to get hooked onto. You just download the app, and it's all. Once you have it, you can actually have your touch. You touch it, and it'll come up. The thing I'm not crazy about, which apparently they're fixing, is you have to basically go out of each account into another account, and you can only have one that's touched. You can touch, and it'll be in there, and all the other ones you have to manually load in. So they're apparently changing that, and you'll eventually be able to do just like you can do on this wallet, where you can load up several of your accounts, and you can look at all of them from your mobile wallet. Any other questions?
So Moosty is a side chain,
Yes.
and when you click on side chains, their coins come up in that, and whatever they transact, will it be part of the side chain? Nothing to.
I'm not really sure all the things. My understanding of how the side chain feature on this is if you're building your own side chain. Moosty will have its own wallet.
Eventually, the tokenization function isn't available yet. So
Right.
Moosey hasn't been able to launch their token, but yeah, that's where you would go. And I would assume that basically when you go in there, you're basically issuing a token. You're starting a token. You're probably deciding the emission and all these things that go into your sidechain, and then you pay the network to register it. But currently, the functionality is not available, so Moosey doesn't have a token.
Right. But so users of Moosty, they don't have to download a separate wallet. It works with this wallet.
You'll be able to access your sidechain tokens in Lisk Hub, exactly.
Okay, and there would be conversion from Lisk to Moosty coin.
Yes.
Right, exactly. You'll be able to transact in between Lisk and the Moosey blockchain, and then also to other sidechains. That's where the real value lies, is that you'll be able to earn your money on this, or just for example, you'd be able to earn some money as a musician in the ecosystem, and then you can take that value out of Moosty, put it into a different sidechain app through Lisk.
So they're going to have a decentralized exchange built into that wallet. So you're going to be able to get on the decentralized exchange part of the wallet and then see all of the tokens and then transact and trade in between the different tokens. So they can pull Moosty tokens out, put them into Lisk or into another project. You can take Lisk tokens and convert them into Moosty.
Okay.
And that's where the ecosystem really comes in. That's why I really call it an ecosystem, because ultimately, Lisk is just the mothership of all these other different projects that will be able to interoperate, communicate with each other, and use each other through Lisk.
Okay. I mean, in a sense, like Moosty users Moosty doesn't have to release their own wallet. They can work only with this wallet.
Right, exactly.
Yeah?
You'll be able to access sidechain tokens through Lisk Hub.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Once you see the 101 delegates, are they basically just on wallets for all the sidechains as well?
No, the sidechains will have their own delegates. So when you create, and you can create different delegate systems. So you don't have to have like I think Brickbit's doing like 202, 211. So they're able to decide, when you create your own sidechain, you're allowed to say how your delegate system is going to work.
I know they talked about having like a delegate marketplace. Is that still on the table, or have they kind of backed away from that?
I don't know that they backed away from it. I think the idea that eventually there would need to be somewhere where the side chains and the prospective operators can meet. But I think that there is going to need to be that type of functionality in order to get things flowing for sure. Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, I'm all done. And you can follow us on Blockspace, BLOQ SPAC, both on Twitter and on Telegram. We put out videos and stuff like that. Regularly, about once a week, we put out a video that highlights different parts of the Lisk system, and sometimes the side chains too. So, next.
Wow. I'm on this, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. I had to laugh when Bob said he doesn't give his wife his passphrase. I could give my wife mine, because she don't know what to do with it. I told her I was flying to Austin. She's like, "Why are you going down to Austin?" So you see my sister, she lives in Houston. No, I'm going down doing a presentation on Lisk. She's like, "Lisk? That stuff you work with all the time, that fake money stuff?" Why do you think it's fake money? If I can't spend it, it ain't real. So, yeah, she can take the password. She would really benefit from one of these meetups. Gotta get her out here. Where is that? There. Awesome. There we go. All right, let's see here. Perfect, perfect. Okay, so I am Tony Morinello. My better known in the community is Tony T908. Where is my? There we go. Okay. So basically, my role in the Lisk ecosystem is more of a tool creator. I've created a number of tools. I can't even tell you how many I've made in the past year, year and a half. When I get done with going over the Lisk core API specifically, I will demonstrate one of my tools that I have built. Now, when I'm going over Lisk core API, I understand that we are not all developers. Okay, who here would consider themselves a programmer by any means? And okay, let me specify that. You could make, like if I said in any language, make a simple calculator that adds a couple numbers together. Could you do that? Okay, good. Who here has used an API before? Good, about half. Okay, so I need to use that. So we have two different people, people that have used an API and people that haven't used an API. And I want to show something that actually, how you could use that for both sets. Okay. So what I'm going to do is when I'm going through this API, I'm going to go through the Explorer. I'm going to go through 7 different questions eventually. Things you can do with the API, and we're going to test that through the Lisk Explorer. Okay. So first of all, the official documentation. Very easy to use. Okay, this is the official Lisk.io, Lisk core API documentation. Top part, you go over your restrictions, your requests, your response. All of the responses are in JSON. Difference with date formats, pagination. And what we're going to focus on this section is really the list of endpoints. Okay, so we have accounts. Okay, that's that number, we had that Bob demonstrated with the Lisk Hub. Blocks, okay, every 10 seconds a block is forged. DAF's currently not really being used because it's inactive. Delegates, those are the 101 delegates that are securing the network. The node that has Lisk core in place. We have peers, we have signatures, transactions, and then voters and votes. So remember back at the beginning of this presentation, Brand talked about Lisk core. So what is Lisk core? Lisk core is the nucleus. That is what runs pretty much the entire operation. That is what holds all the data. And a node holds, it's basically every node has a new copy of that data from the Lisk blockchain. And the software that's using all that data is Lisk core. So it is the bread and butter of Lisk. Choice of nodes. So if you're going through the API, okay, the API is just one segment. It's one way to interact with the blockchain to get the data. I basically give 3 different options for nodes. Okay, you could use one of the official Lisk HQ nodes, node 01.lisk.io/API. Official is always a good way to go. My demonstration today, when I'm going through, will use the official one. You could go to a third-party node. This one in particular is very reliable. It's kept up by a forging delegate. It's very fast, very reliable. I use it a lot for my tools. If you don't want to go with one of those 2 routes, you could even create your own node. Okay, it's very, I would say, pretty easy to keep a node up. It's pretty inexpensive, more secure, and more, you control the reliability of that node.
In that case, you'd be doing localhost at API, correct?
Well, if you're running it locally on your machine, yes.
Right.
If you're hosting it, it would be through
Your own remote node.
Correct. Yeah, it could be localhost. Okay, so 7 questions. We're going to start off very simple. Again, I'm trying to do this where it's a non-developer mindset. Okay. So, first question: what is the current block height? Okay, every single block, whenever a block is forged, in 10 seconds another block is forged. So the very first block was block 1. 10 seconds later, block 2, then block 3. So what do? The API end node, or endpoint is node. And for all of these, we are just assuming that we are going through one of those nodes at first, and I just want to show the back end of that API call. So it's this node/status. It gives us a lot of information. Okay, we can see, if you can, I know it's really small or hard to see, but you can see the front end of this call is, I'm going through the official Lisk API, node/status. Again, this is all in JSON format, so I'm just going to highlight what the important stuff is. We don't need to get a full representation. Network height, 7,691,646. If I refresh, that number will increase. Okay, now it's at 49. Now it's at, now it's at 50. Okay? So that would be the current block height. Number 2, what is the current balance of an address? One of the most common questions: how much Lisk do I have? Okay. API endpoint accounts. Now we have /accounts, question mark, address equals, and then in squiggly lines, whatever your address is. Okay, obviously you don't put in address, you put in your actual address. So you come in, you see a balance, it's a really large number. It's not quite that much. So let's look. Let's go to the Explorer. Type in that address. So we see it's 9,139. Well, if we go to here, this is, oops, if we go to balance, this is in what we call betas. Anybody know what a Satoshi is? What's a Satoshi? What's that? One faction of a Bitcoin. In Lisk, we have betas after all our betas, who is, what's his official title? CTO?
Oh yeah, he's a CTO.
CTO of Lisk. Okay, so this is in beta form, not in Lisk form, so we don't have decimal points in the API. Now another thing, I don't think I really mentioned it, when we're going through this, I don't expect you to memorize, okay, I'm going to go home and memorize accounts, question mark. I get that, okay, you can look through the official documentation. What I really want to get out is when I demonstrate my tool at the end, you can say, oh yeah, I remember, Tony talked about that. I could get that information the same way he did. That's the idea here. And just really demonstrate, even if you never did that, just demonstrate how easy it is to use this API, how well documented it is. So even if you're not going to develop a side chain or develop a tool yourself, you know that the power is out there for others to do that. What are the 10 richest addresses? Who are the whales in Lisk? Again, we're going through accounts. We're setting the sort value equal to balance, descending. Okay, so we're going to go from the highest down to the lowest. And we're going to limit it to 10. Now a little caveat with that, limit is automatically 10, that's the default. You don't actually need it, but I just want to show it for demonstration purposes. So we go here, and we have a bunch of different addresses. Here's the number 1 address. Does anybody want to take a stab at it? What do we think? What type of address do we think has the highest amount of Lisk?
Polonex.
It is an exchange, and it is Polonex. Very good. With 9,214,000 Lisk. That makes sense, right? All right. Number 4, what delegates are an address voting for? So this is a common thing that we need for tools. You need to know, okay, here's an address, what delegates are they voting for? Very common with tools. That is going for the votes endpoint. and we see its address equals and the address number. This is one of the few that's the maximum limit is 101. Most of the time it is 100. Does anybody know why it's a limit of 101 and not 100? Why that extra one?
You gotta delegate all the delegates.
Well, how many forging delegates are there?
101.
How many people can address vote for?
101.
101. So it doesn't make sense to have 100. So it has 101, so you can see all of the delegates that you are voting for. I didn't go over that. So we go here, and it's just a list of every single user that person is voting for. 5, what are the most recent 20 transactions in the blockchain? We're going through the transactions endpoint. And again, we're using sort. And it is timestamp descending again. And now the limit is 20 because I want the actual 20 most recent transactions. And if we go here, we'll see if we go, doesn't matter what they are, but we'll see the timestamp or the height is very close to the official height right here. You could also, let me zoom in a little bit. You'll see on the Explorer we have, zoom in too much. So we see this transaction ID starts 2543. And
Wait, wasn't that the Polo transaction history?
Oh yeah, I'm on the
transaction history.
Thank you. Okay, so we have 1463 is the ID. 1463. Okay, so it works out. Okay, now what is the largest transaction ever? That's a very common question. Again, sorting by the amount, descending for transactions. Now this one I didn't change the limit, so we have the actually the 10 largest transactions. And we will see. The largest transaction ever was 13 million. 13 million. How big was the Polo wallet?
Smaller than that?
Smaller than that, yes.
But also too, that was in March when the value was around like $15.
Yes. So do the math as to how much this transaction was worth. Stellar's eyes got this big. Okay, that's over 100 million. Can you imagine typing in that address and how many times you would double, triple, quadruple check? Because if you mess that number up.
How much did it cost to transfer that 100 million?
A whopping
Say
.1 Lisk.
if it was $15, then $1.50.
Actually, and the reason this transaction was made it was because CoinCheck was changing their wallet. So this is their new wallet here, new cold wallet.
It's a pretty big bug bounty though, huh? All those huge exchange wallets. If you can break Lisk, it's kind of an indicator that the cryptography works, because if you can break it, you can steal 9 million Lisk, which is still 9 million something, or $10 million right now, you know, or really more than that. So. Yeah, true. There's definitely some difficulties.
All right, so that was the largest transaction ever. Let's go with the largest transaction this week. Just a small little tweak. And the reason I'm really going through this one is because of the tool I'm about to show you. Very similar, but what did we add? What field did we add? We had amount, we had sort, we had sorting by amount. What did we add?
From specific times.
Yeah, from specific timestamp. So as long as the timestamp is greater than this number or equal to it, it'll be in the data. Now what does this timestamp mean? And just to go over this very quickly without me becoming the computer science teacher that I am. So who here has heard of a Unix timestamp? Okay, a couple of us. That is the number of seconds after January 1st, 1970. We won't go into the time. Lisk has its own timestamp or epoch from May 24th, 2016 at 5 p.m. Why that date and time for Lisk? What is so important?
Started.
Yes, very good. That is when the Lisk blockchain, the mainnet, went live. So there are 1,464,000,000 so on seconds between these two dates, January 1st, 1970 and May 24th, 2016. Okay, I'm not going to do the math, just trust me. So to calculate the Lisk timestamp for the last week, you take the current Unix timestamp, okay, because most software does not have the capability to go through the Lisk epoch. You have to go through Unix. You subtract the number, that is 1,464,000,000, and subtract the seconds in a week, which is 604,800. And after all that, we get, what is this number? This number is when this meetup today started. That's the Unix timestamp, 6 p.m. today. And we get 78,714,000. All the way back, that's the number right there. Let's look. So the largest transaction within the last 7 days. Explore. Was a 3,890,000 transaction. I believe this was an exchange as well. Yep. A lot of exchanges are going to have the biggest number. Okay. Any questions on the API portion of my little spiel here? Okay. A little bit technical, I understand. If I went over some people's heads or got a little more, I had to apologize. But what I'm going to show you now, I wouldn't say I struggled, but I went back and forth as to what tool I wanted to demonstrate. Brandon talked to me about coming here and speaking to you. He was not adamant, but he requested that I go over one of the tools I created, and I couldn't really quite figure out which would be the best. But since I was going over the API, I figured that the chain analysis tool would be the best to demonstrate, be a good segue for my presentation. So what is the Lisk chain analysis tool? So it's the official definition is the tool provides an in-depth analysis of what happens with all transactions on the Lisk blockchain, and note that all times are in UTC. Basically, it's just an overall analytic tool for the blockchain. It serves no one particular purpose. Okay, a couple little questions you could have. It's the 7 questions I just went through. You can discover most of them through this tool and other things. Or maybe you just want to monitor the blockchain without creating your own tool or really looking in depth. Gives you a nice visualization. The first thing, and a lot of people do overlook this, is the toggle. You'll say, well, how come there's only 17 transactions? There's only 17 transactions in the last hour. There's a toggle for, you can toggle by data from the last hour, last day, last week, last 30 days, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, remember that timestamp field that went over. That's how you're using that. We'll do last week. That's a good. So the first section, we do have to look up here, and you can see the most recent Lisk block. That was the first thing I showed you. Okay, with the nodes dash status. So we have a number of transactions. There are many types of transactions. You can see the overall in the last week there are 15,401 transactions. A regular transaction is just I'm sending Lisk to you, or you're sending Lisk to me. Votes, there have been 214 votes. I also include, with those 214 votes, there were 118 unique wallets. So it's not just one person creating 15 votes. You can see how many wallets and how much Lisk is actually being voted with those lists. Yes?
What do the delegates vote for?
What did the delegates vote for? Or what do, I think the better question would be, what do votes count towards in Lisk? Because you don't have to be a delegate to vote. Any address can vote. Is that what you're asking?
No, I mean, in the previous presentation they mentioned that you can change the setting to delegate, and then you can vote.
Okay.
Right? What do they vote for?
So Lisk is DPoS, it is delegated proof of stake.
Okay.
So if you have, let's say, 1,000 Lisk, and you vote for a delegate or multiple delegates, you're saying that, okay, I use my 1,000 Lisk to vote for that delegate or that group of delegates. The top 101 delegates by vote weight are the ones that are forging blocks on the network.
Okay. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but that would be automatic, right? Like recognizing the blocks, that would be automatic. They don't have to go through the transactions or anything like that.
Each delegate forges, so if there's 101 delegates, it goes through each delegate individually. They forge those blocks. So it's not really automatic, and then if there's a bad actor, then they can be unvoted. That's the power of delegate approved state. Good question. And then down below we have different chart. You can see, okay, breakdown of the different transaction numbers. So maybe if we go by month, let's say last 30 days, you can see, okay, beginning of the month, maybe there's a spike in the transaction, or a spike in number of transactions, or vice versa. And then you can also limit it from regular transactions or just regular transactions. Okay. Something I wanted to, something cool I found. Oh, that was on the next one. I'll show it for a second. We'll go down to the next section. The amount of Lisk sent and received. So this is there's a kind of caveat here where we say we're looking at Lisk from exchanges and to exchanges. That could be a powerful analytic tool. Not every single exchange has the ability to really monitor that because of how exchanges work, but it gives a good idea anyway, good generalization of, okay, is more Lisk being sent to an exchange or being brought from an exchange? Or non-exchange transactions. Okay, if I send Lisk to Brandon, we're not an exchange, okay, that would come up as a non-exchange. And one of the cool things I found out here, we noticed there's kind of a discrepancy, right? There's a lot of Lisk being sent non-exchange here. So why is that? I'll show you that afterwards. And then we can cancel out the non-exchanges, and you can kind of compare Lisk going from the exchange to exchange. Active and inactive wallets. So what is an active wallet? For the purposes of this tool, it's any address, any wallet that has sent out a transaction, not incoming. Okay? Let's say Brandon loses his passphrase. He doesn't have access to that wallet anymore. And then 3 years down the road, I send him one Lisk. It's still an inactive wallet. Okay, so he has to send that transaction out for it to still be active.
So it looks like very, very little is active and a lot of stuff's kind of sitting.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that's true with pretty much every blockchain right now. How many people are holding Bitcoin right now as like it's gold?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Well, what's the time frame on that?
Right now, this is last week. Now, here's an interesting thing. I have an all feature. So, how many of those wallets do you think are active in the all? They should be all, right? Should be all, right?
What about this? There's probably a couple exceptions.
Yeah, there are 16,992 exceptions, actually. There are 16,992 registered wallets that have a transaction to them that have never made an outgoing transaction. Some of those are ICO wallets that never made a transaction. Some of those are, if I mean to send it to one address and send it to another, okay, that's a dead wallet. That would be considered inactive wallet.
So what happens to those, the currency Lisks?
So it's one of two things. It's either somebody gets lucky and gets that wallet address in the future, and that's a nice Christmas present for them and their kids. In most cases, it's very, very, very unlikely. In most cases, it's burned. It's not going to ever be used. And there are actually some addresses that there has been Lisk sent to that there's no way that address can be generated.
So nobody can claim it, right?
Nope, it's gone. That's why it's so important to make sure that when you're sending a transaction, that you're sending it to the correct address. Otherwise, you're just burning it.
Yeah, there are some companies out there that, not only in the Lisk ecosystem, but in the Bitcoin ecosystem, that are trying to quote unquote mine inactive accounts like this that haven't been touched in a very long time, trying to find out the key. But they are basically just rolling the dice, so to speak, really, or kind of gambling to try to find something really more like buying a lottery ticket with worse odds.
You probably had, you have a better shot at getting struck by lightning 50 times.
Right.
I mean, literally, it's so unrealistic. And especially if they have a second passphrase on, then it's
Also dependent on the philosophy of that individual chain. Along the time frame, some chains may decide they want to try to reclaim inactive accounts. It's like controversial in the space, but there are some cryptocurrencies that have proposed that. Like for example, Bitcoin SV just proposed to reclaim Satoshi's coins. Correct me if I'm wrong, right?
Really?
I'm pretty sure Bitcoin SV just proposed to reclaim Satoshi's coins, right?
Yeah, they're gonna all inactive and unused accounts. They're going to put them back into the mining pool some kind of way. Yeah, I don't know how they're gonna do it. But yeah, they have a proposal that if you've been inactive for X amount of time, then your coins are forfeited. So don't use SV.
I'll stick to Lisk. So we have forged and fees. How much Lisk has been forged in that amount of time? How much fees have been gathered? This number will go down once we get dynamic fees in the near future.
So what was the actual qualifications though of an inactive account in this case?
Inactive account is just whatever time frame you select. It has not had an outgoing transaction. Any type of transaction.
So you could send money from an exchange to an account and never send an outgoing transaction. That would be on
It's
the
never been, what is the word they use? Not confirmed.
Initialized?
Initialized, yeah.
Yeah, initialized. If you go to the, this is a little bit of a side here.
And all these accounts have something in them, right? They have to, that's.
Yeah, so here's an account. It is the 11th most highest wallet. And look at that. So there is a wallet out there that has 1.6 million from Genesis.
And then
That has never had an outgoing transaction. So is it somebody that bought into the ICO of Lisk that, you know, they forgot about it, or maybe they lost the passphrase? What happened to this account? Maybe somebody's going to wake up one day, hey, let me go look at that Lisk thing, and they'll see it on, you know, there'll be a Super Bowl commercial. Oh wait, I think I have an address, and then they're going to be a millionaire.
they actually do, these accounts actually do have weakened cryptography on these addresses though. Basically, or not necessarily that they have weakened cryptography, but someone can register, if someone basically.
So what you were talking about, the Christmas gift?
The barrier to generating this account is much lower until you initialize it, because the amount of numbers that can go into an address are much less than the amount of numbers that can go into a public key. But the network can't know your public key until you register it to the network by sending a transaction. So effectively,
For each address, there can be multiple public keys.
Right.
So if you're sitting there mining, and you want to mine an address, one that doesn't have an initialized public key,
these would be the ones that
you
go
can
in.
find a public key that matches it, and you can register it, and then the blockchain will reject any other public key. So
You could steal this address still, according to the network, basically, is what not initialized means. But it still would be extremely difficult.
Extremely.
once you make an outgoing transaction, there's only one public key that can sign the transactions for that account.
But it becomes next to impossible once you use the true amount of cryptography that the system uses through its public keys.
Yeah,
But
once you
there's
have an
only so
outgoing
many numbers
transaction. Yeah.
that you can have.
When they introduce dynamic fees at some point, are they going to have an auto initialization and create an account?
They've talked, I don't know the specific details of how or when, but that's been talked about. Yeah.
It's not that much, but still.
Yeah, and I'm not sure about like addresses that haven't been initialized have already been created. I don't know how that'll work. I don't know how that'll work, but I know it has been talked about for quite some time. So I wouldn't even say that this is like a realistic security flaw. Okay, it's just like Stellar said, it's just a little bit reduced. But even that will be improved in the future. Okay. Now, if there's one thing to take away from today, remember, if I motivated you to hack this account and you were successful, Tony T908. Look it up and send it. Help a brother out, okay? All right, you got a little off track. That was good, though. Good conversation. Good lesson. The last thing on the Lisk chain analysis tool, top 100 tables. So you'll notice that, you know, I have another drop down here, number of transactions in a block. The highest number of transactions is 8,176, and the rest are 25. Two things going on here. Why is it 25?
Maximum number per block.
Yeah, right now there's an artificial limit on the Lisk network because it's not in using its full capacity. So it's an artificial limit of 25 transactions per block. Okay, and every block is every 10 seconds. Okay, we don't need to increase that number. They could increase it if they wanted to right now. It will be increased in the near future. But how did this one get through? How is there one block with 8,176?
That's
Genesis block, yep. And if you click on here, you can see the Genesis block. And we can go through the Genesis count.
100 million.
Genesis count. And you can see it is a really large negative number.
And that 8,000 whatever is about the number of ICO participants that there were.
Right. Correct. But there's also delegate registration and votes as well. So it's a little bit less.
Right. Well, yeah. So, but you still probably.
You're looking at about 8,000. Yeah, you're right. Yep. 8,000. You should say ICO wallets because you have more than one. That's some of the more useful information that you could see amount in a block. Okay, in that time span. So let me go back to week. A little more interesting, a little more useful. So the amount in a block. We see that number. This is kind of an outlier. Whoops, not that one. 3 million. That was the one with that red chart I showed you earlier. And again, it has another Binance transaction where Binance was moving vaults around. So that is the chain analysis tool in a nutshell. In the future, I have, really with all my tools, I have things planned. I'm going to come out with updates all the time. With this tool specifically, what I want to incorporate is some like overlays where, okay, you can see the number of transactions. You can see, okay, there's 2,908 transactions in this time period. I want to be able to click on this and actually view those transactions in the chart. And that's what I call chain analysis 2.0. So that'll be out, I don't know when. We'll say soon, 4 to 6 weeks. No, it'll be out soon. I got a bunch of other updates as well to make, particularly with the rich list that's coming up next. Okay. Any questions? All right.
Could you show your code, like just briefly? As a developer, inspect that?
No, because it's on the server. I have to log into the server. I can't do that.
Yeah, it's not public. This code is not public. So it's not public, right?
Not for this one, no.
Right.
That's right, you do it on the back end.
Everything except the total payout tool is on the back end.
Okay.
But when I update that, that'll also be on the back end as well. Okay. Cool. All right.
Tony.
Thank you very much.
We've got a surprise video from another Lisk sidechain developer, GNY.io. They are planning to bring machine learning to the Lisk blockchain application platform. And so they have a little 3-minute video that they've put together to explain what their project is.
Hi everyone. Hi everyone, it's Zach Burnett here from Genie HQ in New York City. On behalf of the entire Genie team, I want to congratulate you on the announcement of the Lisk City. We also want to give a quick shout out to the Lisk groups in South America and in Houston. Richard's going to come on in a second and tell you about how Genie's going to bring machine learning to the community through Lisk machine learning. But first, a couple of announcements. Our ICO closed just a couple weeks ago, and our CTO, Tom, is working hard to decentralize our machine learning platform on-chain. This means that any digital entrepreneur can access state-of-the-art AI as a scalable, pay-as-you-go utility. Pretty exciting. Finally, our social impact partnership with Child Rescue Coalition is live, and we're using AI to analyze known child predator data and help law enforcement. If you have a project that you think might need AI support, please reach out to me through the website. Let's talk about it. Finally, here's Richard as a sexy Bitmoji to tell you more about Lisk machine learning.
Hi, I'm Richard from Genie.io. Let's go over our new product, LML, Lisk Machine Learning. We're going to be the first platform generating machine learning sidechains. I'm excited about it. Our platform brings ML capability onto the Lisk network, allowing true next-gen AI chains programmed using JavaScript. The great user experience you get from using Lisk Hub will be carried over into our system. Soon you're going to find our application here, in the Lisk sidechain section of the Lisk Hub. It's the perfect fit for our network. LML will allow the creation of sidechains with machine learning inbuilt. It's going to be its own dedicated platform. LML tokens will be required to create new chains on the system. Let's take a look at the LML world. Each one of those stars, that's a sidechain. It's a universe of machine learning going on. Let's take a look at a few. This sidechain is taking real-time user data and helping reduce bike users' journey times, help city planners place the next city park, and improve health of users. Let's take a look at another. This sidechain has been launched by a wildlife charity. They're using machine learning to monitor smart communication with users to achieve sustainable development. Thanks for taking a quick look into the LML universe. Stay tuned, there's going to be a lot more to come.
Hi everyone, hi Lisk here. This is Cosmos from Genie. First of all, I wanted to say thank you so much for all of your help and support during ICO for a company that's so important for us. I want to provide a few updates to you. First of all, we have launched an ambassadorship program, and our first US ambassador is Javier Guerra. We're very excited for him to join us. Lenny from lisktools.eu will also be joining us. He will be specifically building tools for LML. Also, we're proud to announce that LML tokens will be traded on Cryptopia. So have a great meetup, and we're looking forward to working together. Thank you.
Yeah, I just noticed that they got listed on a few exchanges, the Lisk machine learning token.
I thought I saw that.
Yeah, looked like it was, I mean, day one for a new edition is usually always good, but it looked like it was doing well day one, you know, so.
They're looking pretty professional too on their content as well, so that's great to see.
Well, basically they want to collect their capital now, so they just go ahead and issue a token or anything they can to collect capital, and then eventually they're going to have their own blockchain that interoperates with Lisk, right? Was that way? Okay, right? They're not going to have that.
The LML token is for the Lisk sidechain. So
right.
Yeah, Genie is a little bit different. We're going to have they're going to have their own main chain, and they're also going to have a Lisk sidechain.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I would imagine when the time comes, everyone who holds the ERC20 token will get issued a complimentary sidechain token. So
Right, on the blockchain, or a Lisk one or something.
or something, right? Yeah, something like that, or maybe just a snapshot of that blockchain at a specific time and get out, and then it's like, that's it. Like, people still consider it to have value, okay, but they probably shouldn't. Right.
All right, we are starting to run out of time, so I'm going to try to go through this pretty quickly, but I wanted to give a little bit of a more in-depth review of Lisk Elements and Lisk Commander. So we talked before about how Lisk Elements is the JavaScript library that developers are going to use to put together their applications, their side chains. It's basically the code that's going to make life a lot more simple for them. Now, when Tony was giving his presentation, he showed how to get transactions using the Lisk core API. So you saw those, kind of the URL with some parameters at the end of the URL. So there's multiple ways to do that. One is that the Lisk Elements has its own API too, and so For example, if you were programming a job, an application, in this case, your syntax might be get and then some options. As I mentioned, the Lisk documentation is really good, and so they actually give examples of how this stuff is used. So they begin, and I won't show the client object is created, but they take this object and then they call the get method on it, and they pass it, in this case, username Oliver, and then once they get that, log it to the console, show it to the browser, and so that's what you would do to get the account information for username Oliver if you're writing a JavaScript program with it. Another interesting part of the API is the transactions resource. If you want to get some information about a transaction, you can again take this client object that gets created and go to this time the transaction section and then pass a transaction ID to it and say once you get that, and then log it to the console. Same goes with broadcast transactions. So if you already have a transaction, this is actually what a Lisk transaction looks like. You can see the JSON here with your IDs and amounts and the fees that are included and the type of transaction, timestamps, who sent it, what their public keys are, who's getting it, the signatures for the block or for the transaction. This is what a basic Lisk transaction looks like. You can pass that as the argument into the broadcast method here, and then that's what sends it out to the blockchain. So your program could make use of this library as well, and then once you get it back, you can log the results of the console to show whether your broadcast was successful. Now this transaction object here, it looks like it'd be a lot of work, but Lisk Elements has some stuff for that too. So if you go down to the transactions library, you can see how they handle those things. So here, methods for creating transactions, and it's real easy: transfer and then pass it some options. So in this case, here's our options. They've got it all laid out for us. We can pass the an amount or who we want to send it to. Their public key is optional. We can go either or on the recipient ID or the public key. We mentioned the data field where you get to attach 64 bytes of data to a transaction. You can put that in. You can put in your passphrase, and that will create the transaction object that you could then broadcast if you wanted to. So here's an example of that. Here's a very simple one. It's transactions.transfer, and here we're just saying this is the amount, and here is the recipient ID. Now, even this amount, you'll notice this is actually in Beddoes. So Lisk Elements has some things to convert that as well, to go from Lisk to Beddoes. And I think that's under maybe under the cryptography library. But they have some useful methods in here as well, as from hashing to pulling addresses. Actually, it's not in. Maybe it's under the constants. I'd have to dig around a little more. I don't remember which. Actually, it's probably back in this one. But it'd basically be simple, basically saying convert list to Beddoes, and it would come out with that your Lisk sum in Beddoes. So here it is right here. Lisk convert Beddoes to Lisk, and they got convert list to Beddoes. So you're just basically calling this and passing an amount, and so you can plug that into the transactions code up here. As well when you wanted to do the amount. So where was that at? Yeah, so up here you could make it more complex, I believe. So that's Lisk Elements in a nutshell. There's a lot more you can do. A little more nuts and bolts sort of stuff from, like we talked about, the cryptography. Even changing buffers to hex and parsing encrypted passphrases to pull out the number of iterations and salt and all that sort of stuff. Now, Lisk Commander, as we mentioned, some people may not want to do that every time. Maybe they don't want to use the core API, or maybe they need a little more programmability than the core API is offering them. But they don't want to go all the way to coding everything out through the library. Well, then they can try out Lisk Commander. So here's just a Windows command line. I wish I had Bash for you because I could do some more cool stuff, but as I mentioned, I had some laptop problems, so I haven't had a chance to get Bash installed. But if I type in Lisk from the command line, once I have it installed, all you really need is Node.js installed, which comes with NPM, and you should be good to go to get Lisk installed. It's just a one command line installation. But here's all your options right now. Consistent with the list's emphasis on having great documentation, each one of these you can get more information about. So for example, account, if I type in Lisk account, I can type in help, and I can get how I'm going to use this thing. It shows in this case Lisk account, and then I'm going to put in the command. And for the commands, I can create an account, I can get an account, I can show account. So let's try Lisk account create. And I'm going to try a little trick here where you put in a tag, an option called pretty on the end. And here, just what we saw in Hub where you create an account, you can do that with Commander as well. So you've got everything you need, your passphrase, your private key, your public key, the address. If I was in Bash, I could then send this to a file. I could run this with a Bash script and do a loop and then create a bunch of accounts and send all that to files if I wanted to. So you can see how this becomes more programmable. Even on the Lisk account create, if I want to help on that, that's got additional help too, with showing the different options I can attach to it and the usage, and even examples of how I'm supposed to make this work. So it's very very useful, and so far very intuitive, and also very, very helpful. What they've done here. Now I showed you the creation of a transaction object in the Lisk elements, the code we used to do that, how we passed the parameters. You can do that in Commander as well, and it's a little bit simpler. So in this case, we could do Lisk transaction, and I'm going to put help on there just to review the syntax. And so in this case, it says we can create a transaction. So let's just try that. So we're going to do Lisk transaction create. And I'll help one more time just to make sure I get the order right. So I've got a few more options here. And so, I think what we're going to do is we're going to try to send 100 Lisk to this address. So we'll do Lisk transaction create, and then 100. And I'm just going to grab this up here. It doesn't really matter. We're not going to broadcast it anyways. Transaction, create, transfer. All right, so there we go. So again, very helpful. I messed it up, and so they have even examples of the proper way to do this. Got extra space in here. Alright, so it's asking me for a passphrase, and I'm just going to put ABC, which is kind of an interesting thing on here. On the Hub, you actually have to use an actual 12-word passphrase that enforces that, but on Commander, if you want your passphrase to be, ABC123, you can actually do that. And so our output here, you can see, is the transaction JSON for transactions. It's got everything we need for the amount that we sent, which is, it totals out to be 100 Lisk. The recipient that we put it into, and it's actually used the Lisk elements library to fill in the rest of the stuff for us. So it's filling in the public keys and fees and and whatnot. So if I wanted to, I could then go ahead and then call a broadcast, give a broadcast command to actually go ahead and broadcast this, or I could chain multiple commands together, say create it and then broadcast it. So there's a lot that you can do with Lisk elements, and as you play with it, you can start to get more and more sophisticated. Just one more thing I wanted to show you on this was the message section of it. So if we do Lisk message help, we'll see some options that we have there. And here we can encrypt messages, we can decrypt messages, we can sign messages and verify messages. So it's all really useful stuff if you're in the cryptography world. For example, let's say you call up an exchange and say, hey, I sent some list to this address, and it's not showing up, and so how do we know you sent it? And maybe you give them a transaction. How do we know that's your transaction? Well, I can sign a message from that wallet showing I control the wallet, so I know that it was actually me who sent that. And I'm just not trying to be an imposter or something. So there's different ways that you can use this too. So if we wanted to, for example, sign a message, we might do Lisk message sign, and then the classic hello world. Ought to do it. And again, it's going to ask for our password, and it's giving us our signed message. So we have the message, hello world, my public key that is based off of that password that I entered in. It's already figured that out for me, and then it signed the message. If we wanted to, we could go in and pass all this information to the verify function, and assuming we got it right, and it really was from us, it would say verify, message true, or verify true, if I'm actually the person who signed that message, or if the signature matches the public key in the message. So that's it for Commander in a nutshell. You can see I do a lot of stuff with it. We just barely scratched the surface, but developers are really gonna like it, especially once we start adding things like create your Genesis block and so forth. So yeah, that's it for Commander.
You got a phone call.
Oh, we're supposed to get more than this.
That's why you left.
That's why I think
Oh, you did when you put us downstairs.
Well, we can give away some lists anyways. How many folks are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. I don't know about all you regulars. Maybe just limit this to Austin people. What do you think? Austin people good with that? So I'll tell you what, let's stop by and give me your email addresses. Because I know we're getting late, we probably don't have time for games and all that. It's already 8:45. But give me your email address, and I will email you a passphrase, or I'll email you a Lisk account. Or if you have a Lisk account, just give it to me, or reply to the email with your Lisk account. We can do it either way. Just reply to the email with either here's my Lisk address, or give me an account, and I'll send it to you. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna take 50 lists. We're gonna divide it 3 ways, and it's all yours.
Oh, sweet. Appreciate it.
All right. Any questions?
I had a question about just the scalability thing, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand the side chains. You have the main chain. You can eliminate some of the, or a tremendous amount of flow off the main chain into these side chains. If the side chain gets popular enough, you're eventually going to run into the same issues just on that side chain, or is it the core functionality allows you to have side chains of side chains to eliminate some of that flow?
Well, you saw Gene Watch learning how side chains and side chains.
Okay, so is that the whole scalability idea? Is like the core is there and that functionality can continue to build on itself?
Yeah, they can.
I think the idea,
Go ahead.
I think the idea would be, let's go with CryptoKeys for instance. When that problem happened, it blocked everything down.
Right, yeah.
So if you have a problem where, okay, one side chain gets blocked down, every other side chain is unaffected, the main chain is unaffected.
Right.
So the scalability issues of that side chain would be up to that side chain. Could they have a side chain of side chains? Absolutely, or some other type of.
So that functionality, that does exist. So you can just like say, okay, like my side chain's getting overwhelmed. Like obviously, like it's still great that no one else is getting bogged down. Because CryptoKitties, if it, it just screws up everyone else.
Right.
But still on the side chain, I'm sure they don't want to be bogged down. So just the
So they can scale up those side chains. Also, there's nothing preventing them. Lisk is trying to do everything in a really modular way. So there's nothing preventing them from also adopting some of these scalability solutions that other chains, technologies, single chain technologies are adopting. So things like sharding and things like that. You may be able to. They're trying to make even with the consensus on the side chains, it's just plug and play, swappable, change things out. There's talk of running Ethereum virtual machines on a Lisk side chain. So a Lisk side chain could have an EVM running on it that implements sharding. You have some really nice, the initial separation gives you a huge kick, but it's not the end of the road. You can also adopt the other scalability methods to those single chain techniques as well.
These side chains, are they going to be like dependent on the Lisk main chain? Like if the Lisk main chain, like just hypothetically disappeared, is a side chain kind of almost like a standalone blockchain, other than the fact that maybe you're using Lisk tokens to basically prove that side chain?
So you're going into a lot of theory right now because the side chains aren't there. I don't think anybody could quite answer that unless Max all over here.
Right.
But my guess would be that if they would still exist, you would be able to send transactions in and out all
I
from.
think you lose some functionality. For instance, obviously transferring lists back and forth between the chains. And list were to go down for some reason, then you lose that functionality. But decentralized exchange that Lisk is planning to implement, you're losing that. So, but I think you're just going to have a lot of standalone capability as well.
The transaction shouldn't be affected though. So like the good news is that even if Lisk did go down, you wouldn't have to like worry about a potential like reorg or something on your side chain. So like you would probably still have those protections. Like Tony said, like it's very theoretical because obviously you would have some issues, but I would think that if Lisk went down, there wouldn't still be a way for you to affect the blockchain that's safely in the memory pools of all of the delegates that are on the side chain. Right. So you would at least still have that down.
Transferring tokens in and out of the side chain, you wouldn't have that ability, but transactions within that side chain, I would assume.
See, they even talked about how they, I mean, I know you're saying this was clear, they haven't really discussed at all how they plan to implement it. I mean, I've heard like drive chains or other methodology for having side chains or was it SPV proofs.
Right. Yeah, they have not made it official.
So it's kind of still.
We're still guessing exactly
Their
what.
side chains.
I know, there's a paper, if you want to know what they thought about it in 2016, there's a paper written by Max called What is Lisk? And he actually does detail the two ways that he thought at the time, at least, that side chains would work for Lisk. But it doesn't give you much more information than you could go do on your own research about what side chains do. But there was at least that. I think now they're kind of trying to see what fails, basically, around the industry. And then
I know MQ talked about it in the spring, he was on the Lisk chat speaking about it, he said, even though he's more like the Lisk core developer, wasn't in that facet of side chains, he spoke about how they have a bunch of different algorithms and a bunch of different theories of things they've actually written and are currently testing. It's not, to them, it's not really a race to get first, it's the best.
Do it right.
It doesn't matter if we get the first one in a month that doesn't scale, I mean, crypto keys, or we want something 6 months, 8 months down the road that's actually feasible to scale. So yes, there are different theories that have different working versions. It's a matter of narrowing down what's the best.
Also, Lisk doesn't have the burden of proving that this technology works at all. Ethereum was under the burden that it had to prove that smart contracts and decentralized applications couldn't even work at all.
Right.
Now people do this, they say, okay, it can work, but we haven't scaled it yet. So now Lisk has time to say, we're going to do it right.
Actually, a funny thing, I had run upstairs earlier because there was an Ethereum meetup on the 16th floor, so I went and caught the end of that to let them know about this. And at the end of the meeting, there was a bunch of developers, which was nice to see, and they all had a running joke that they were like, oh, we're just going to build an application and hope that we can have a blockchain to deploy it on later. That's literally, and they were all like, and I was like, are y'all serious? And they were like, yeah, actually, we don't know if we're going to be able to deploy on Ethereum. We're just like hoping one of them works. And I was like, oh god, this is a real issue, right? Like that's a thing. So yeah,
There's still something to be done though. I mean, developers can, they've got a whole front end that they need to take care of, and they can anticipate features that they're going to be able to make use of. So there's lots that they can do without fully
yeah,
set
smart
up.
developers are looking for change right now that they think will be having the scaling solutions years from now.
Is that the case with Lisk right now? I mean, is it got to a point with like how advanced elements of Commander is to where developers can really like basically build kind of like this framework and anticipation for what's about to come around when the sidechain development kit at least gets into the alpha phase? Or is it still kind of like we're kind of waiting?
If you forked Lisk as a prototype, used elements and created brand new transaction types for your sidechain, you absolutely could prototype right now. A lot of people have done that. They've taken that route where they basically, because they couldn't launch their own sidechain, decided to fork their code base, build their project in parallel, and then in the future, this is another interesting thing about sidechains, just kind of an aside, but I was also hoping that maybe in the future, we would be able to register existing blockchains as sidechains. So you could launch a Lisk fork now before token functionality. I doubt this is going to happen. This is just an idea. But launch your fork before they have token functionality ready. Start building your prototype. Show people that your development studio knows what new transaction types to create to make your product work, and then just register it to the Lisk chain. And I think that could possibly have a little bit more merit if it was actually a fork of Lisk because it would be the same code base. But I don't know if there is some sort of technical hurdle that would make post-registration on the sidechain
sounds feasible, like you said, go back and add, the right hooks to hook into the list information.
Would that even be necessary with some of the coins out there that are basically talking about like the communication between blockchains? Like maybe you have a middleman blockchain that talks to Ethereum, which talks to Lisk, which allows you to plug into the decentralized exchange somewhere. I don't know.
Well, the interoperability of existing protocols between each other, that's probably too rigid, but maybe not. It might be.
Projects out there that are trying to accomplish that.
No, the problem is that in order to get both sides to make changes that facilitate what you're trying to do, it's going to be difficult. But when you start from the top down, a new ecosystem with a new mothership, and you set the precedent for all these new side chains, maybe we can start to build out that way. And in the future, we might have a more constructive.
And I think a lot of those interoperability sort of build changes you mentioned, they're really pushing standards right now. So
Right.
it's obviously something to pay attention to. That's what's going to make all this stuff work together. So, paying attention to what standards are gaining the most mind share.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's one of the reasons I'm really impressed with Lightning. They're pretty good about their standards right now. It's been good for main developers. It's been pretty impressive to watch.
Right, definitely. And we definitely want to have a few, that's the one thing that we don't have going on with Lisk right now, but we did just implement the Lisk improvement protocol idea, is that we don't have a lot of community developers actually working on core. But now they're starting to finally expose that part of the process more to the open. They've sort of kind of signaled that they're going to allow bounties, and they've made this, official improvement process. So they probably see a lot more community developers contributing now. Those are all the
First of all, I was looking at one standard the other day, it was a Ethereum standard, but they were trying to sort of spread it to other changes based on identity. Like, what are the kind of the core components of identity that blockchains need to recognize them? And so the idea is that multiple chains sort of structure their data the same way, then interoperability becomes more effective.
How do the delegates differentiate themselves to make you want to vote for them?
That's a hot potato. Did you know it was a hot potato?
No, I know that EOS basically, there's block users that are basically developing things for the ecosystem to try and get your vote.
That is the dream. That's what I think a lot of people want to see happen.
So basically, early on, there weren't a lot of ways to really show what your worth was in the ecosystem. So one of the only ways that you could really prove that you had skin in the game was to have holdings, and that's one of the few things that you can use the blockchain to prove. Hey, I got this big chunk of the Lisk. I've never sold it. I'm a good guy, right? So that was one of the first reputation building ideas. And in between that time frame, basically what happened was it took more time than we expected to develop the parts of Lisk that allow delegates to offer a value proposition like the sidechain token. So in between that time frame, what happened to vote sharing? So basically a lot of the delegates started to share some of their delegate reward with their voters. And that kind of created a condition in the ecosystem, kind of sort of a bit of a negative condition. But now voters are starting to get more options, the delegates are starting to offer things, and basically people are starting to vote for more reasons than just the return. They're probably still looking for the return, but they can find different ways to that end. Like for example, maybe instead of just getting a portion of the delegates' rewards, we vote for a delegate that's going to build something for us. And so the options for for voters to make good choices are starting to increase, and you're starting to see really high quality delegates like Tony come out. He hasn't punched into the top 101 yet, but his contributions and his resume, so to speak, for Lisk is very long. And I think people like him have kind of fed into a recent decision we made where we're going to also reward delegates that are slightly outside the 101 list and give them an opportunity to forge a block and get the reward. But ultimately, we're moving towards a more liquid and better decision-making process as voters. We just need HQ to produce the mechanisms of value proposition for delegates, basically. So this campaign is
basically money talked early on, and so the people with the money
what about this
lock down
campaign?
positions. became fairly immobile in this one number one position. Now, the dream of Lisk, or one of the dreams, is to actually have people doing more competing for those spots, more than just based on holding money or spending there for a while. So we need maybe some rearranging incentives and just plans in place now to try to make that happen. But what we'd like to see is people who are developing on this, holding these positions, people who are doing great community outreach, holding
Basically,
positions,
it's
people who are educating or having media properties or incubating. We want to see the block awards actually being used to pay for actual expanding the ecosystem. So the incentives are a little bit out of whack right now, which I think is a lot.
We do discussion, we get the discussion channel.
It's a fairly immobile situation. That said, people have made it in just a couple weeks ago. Somebody who was on the outside got in, and a few months ago, somebody on the outside who was a developer doing cool development things got in.
Just get back with a whale.
He had the backing of what they've done is they flipped up in the group and they said, "Hey, this rule is if you want to the awards from us, so this is better." Oh, thank you. Thank you. Pleasure. And Austin, so people doing. What's your name? Well, I will send you
What's this delegate really work?
and I promise you I'll text so you can use me. And as soon as you get it, then Apple that let's copy and paste it on this one. And then send it to this one to you. Or send it right to exchange. It's yours.
Okay. It sounds good. Thank you.
It's one of those things, like, if you start preparing now,
Sorry,
you'll be ready when full functionality. But as far as their
Hey, there's your Euro sizes, so grab one size bigger than what you want.
Okay, thank you. So, and I only say that because I looked into the roadmaps for 3 or 4 the main side chain, and they all say they're migrating to this chain.
So
around next year, so I don't know if it's all of them just saying that they actually have some inside with it. I mean, we hope so.
Just take some of those balls you have and just write it.
I'm great. I'm not a developer. All the oracles that are basically internet connected devices collecting data.
So my firm specializes in cell phones. You also cover I don't really think there's any way to do anything I
I would never have guessed. I would never have guessed.
I'm sure it's not, but at least they can bring it over to the the moment this is phase 2, you'll be able to say yes, you can choose all the colors you want.
Yes.
Or receive tokens.
It's so hard.
It's on our radar, but I think
Just in case you can more stable storage.
yeah, we are.
Ignore everyone who's wearing a suit, and I look to see people wearing jeans and shorts. And he's like, if you're wearing jeans and shorts, it's like, I immediately like you. He's like, I know you're probably more of an actual IT person, you know, so yeah, not a student.
That's running for him.
Oh, wait, thanks. Oh, never mind.
Yeah, so, and this is it, you gotta go to the work.
You're like, no. Yeah, that's what I swear you're gonna do.
So you stand in the space for
Oh, he might have got
you guys flying in today, or?
Yeah, we flew today, we're flying out tomorrow.
Yeah, so it's
That's what's in the basket on it. I can give you that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's another hoodie? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I read it, I meant to get back to you,
I'm sorry. Mine says ambassador on it, so it didn't work. It's not even free. They didn't understand Texas when they said
We've had the venue we were in before. That's because like we no one's like
HQ wanted
like
to
not have a lot of those. Apparently from talking to people, Austin has a very thriving developer community where they're literally just hanging out.
Jed sent me a message.
Hey,
send me your address, you want to send me something.
There were
And I would sleep 10 minutes later, it's like, just to clarify, your home address. Well, I'm actually, but I just see like that.
Chad, what are you doing? Y'all could have done it huge like yesterday with the meetup and everyone messed me
Yeah, nice to meet you again.
We'll have to come to the San Antonio next time we do that one. This is a little bit small. We've had a.
Yeah. This isn't even their biggest room. The biggest room is in there.
Yeah.
Oh, and they own space on several floors. I got a room over there too.
Oh, that's
Yeah, man. Sit around. Take it easy, guys. Yeah, what are you, Dr. Thunder? If you find a troll post on one of your comments, it's not Artlist or anything like that. It is really cool to meet the community too, man. Yeah. Especially a face behind a name like that. So, yeah, and I'll find out for sure. Yeah. Hopefully we got some side chicks by then too. Yeah. Alright, man. I gotta go take care of
You can't have one skills. You gotta stop running around skins and say, if I ever got in there, I'm gonna kick your company out. It's like, not my company. I'll stop it. So then they get a text today. What the hell happened? It's like, shit. That's serious. He has like 30, he has 40.
Oh, that was it. That's not so good.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, let me write that next email. So that way I can know.
They went Texas too. Well,
But you are texting.
Good seeing you.
Yeah,
Man, taking off.
Yeah, it was good seeing you, man.
Hey, it's nice meeting you.
Nice seeing you again, man. Last time we froze.
Yeah,
It's okay.
Good seeing you, man. Don't forget about
It was
us.
nice meeting you.
you guys feeling nice?
Someone playing together.
Fun out. It's not busy. Obviously, you gotta do. There's a place right across the street called Copper Factory.
He was talking about
What is that?
Because we're actually looking for.
Really, it's hard to do.
Okay. Because the only thing is they were such short notes when they announced them, like, they got two.
I used to talk to him.
But like really,
It was so smooth.
It's not that it's just that I'll refer you to as much credit as possible. You know, so set up the event. This was your, that was your idea. Well, I just want that for you.
They actually have a.
Yeah, and I also took a number of pictures, just like good like portrait shots. You up here, so. It's gotta be fun. I had a busted phone for like the longest, and the service was terrible. And I don't even know how I had to connect that was for so long, but good now.
No, we got a good time. You have some 2012 EP out. But we also know that.
Oh yeah, man, you guys know
exactly.
so I guess it's
And so
you know what's kind of funny? I've actually heard that meetups, overall, they're like initiative to do meetups with
That side.
basically, a bunch of their meetups, people could not answer the
on
questions.
the MVP.
And so, it became like, that can happen at one meetup and not become a public thing, but when that happens at smaller meetups, and like people start to discuss that, that can become like really bad, like it looks really bad. Yeah, exactly, it's a bunch of scrubs, just putting on.
Yeah, you don't have to follow all the pages.
But that's the problem, is that these delegates didn't do enough vetting to do their opinion.
That's a smart way.
So we slowly, you're the first person that we ever worked with here, and then we're like, all right, this guy doesn't tell us to do it. We'll we'll grab those, but yeah.
You said that personally outside of Miami, and obviously.
But not before you flew.
In Colorado.
That's exactly.
Jackson,
Smart.
yeah, Jackson's sharp.
I've seen him in a while.
He does, he's apparently.
Oh man, that'd be especially once the sign ups come out, like that's what I'm hoping to.
Really.
The hope of getting into active one-on-one is, very small, but like, being a delegate on the men's side chain is exactly huge, so.
I don't
That's
know,
definitely
I'm
something
supposed to, I told him a couple of, I was supposed to send Jackson.
I have a couple, but honestly, my big
It's
thing
so
right now
slow
is
right
like,
now, you're really so low to the
it's
point
trying
where I'm
to get
like full, I'm
the
fronting this
idea
year, like several months.
to production. That's what I'm right now, like, it's like, it's like just so hard to keep up with like where to get people.
Right now,
I need a lot of understanding, so I told them that we're developers and coders, like I had this idea.
I told him that day one,
I don't know enough to even like.
I tell him not to be Meetup, but.
Right, well, SDK's not out, there's not a lot of.
Talk about it.
Yeah.
It would have been more effective than in person, but there's just thoughts on it and all. I wish you'd shown more pictures, because the streaming app you're talking about, they actually have like prototypes and stuff.
Well, that's what we just did, trying to get you in touch with,
I think it's only a matter of time before they start showing their hands.
Because like I said,
But I'd like to see. you talk with Lisk, we'll go back and forth, so.
So I would imagine that's not a problem. I guess you can just choose, like you can add a custom server IP for the club to check, and that can be assigned, like add your side chains.
You're saying a hub will send.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, that's when you send like.
Time to, time to update.
Versus new side server. But the question I don't know is, okay.
Well, there's definitely two, we're probably in the middle ground, but two ways to go are either have implement and just something that is just, it's just useful and works really well. And then the other side is I'm pretty sure that they could easily, right, but if you're in the middle, your product, if the side chains are registered in marketing, then you're still
You'll probably be able to find.
But there are good projects,
CEOs or whatever that come up with this classic that allow you to
programmer, and it really is that, they're like, I just want to go to help you, I just want to help coder within the world, and it's like, that'd be nice, you should also be funding the paper deals and features like
to just set differentiation.
Yeah.
Then how would you, like, that's great for the first.
That's really what you're at, yeah, if you're at that point, that's really what you're at, is actually getting the
Algorithm or mistake algorithm.
yeah, like I said, now that I'm talking with you, like, I'm trying to make my point, because like, I go around, travel a lot, and I run into lots of developers. So, all I'm trying to do is get maybe they come out with a sort of like, that way, like when I go around, maybe later, I can just start navigating these side protocols and stuff like that, so.
Doesn't include.
Because I mean, I have some knowledge myself, but for example, it doesn't just, like an implementation.
Obviously, how they people that.
That's what it was.
No, you wouldn't, but that's what I'm saying, I feel like you have some sort of boilerplate that,
That's exactly it.
I guess kind of like
So the one guy keeps turning.
sets up the,
No, we're done with square one, right?
without being the.
Moving on to the
Yeah,
next.
step on our shoulders.
Without being the actual,
You're not going back to square one.
sorry, trying to talk here.
Most of the blockchain nodes, like property transactions between there, that you can send it to anything, and then start sending it to other people.
I'm just wondering if it's a different sense on completely, if it would change that. I would imagine like.
Finding out if you're gonna force.
I got transaction pools, so it makes it sort of transaction pools.
Does that make sense? Even if you have.
So where's your, so are you established as like an entity, or you gonna make like a nonprofit?
Yeah, you should still be able to communicate.
So like a pool, and then once the miners decide to put into a block from that pool, and that's who goes into the transaction system.
Yeah, I'm a lot more familiar with all that side.
My question is if we have these side chains on hubs, how are you gonna take care of more advanced functionality? So let's say you have such a system, ask them details to the chain and all those, or just gonna be completely on those.
It's really, it's the same thing as like
Side
having.
chains for you.
I would imagine too that each side chain will probably have some sort of like, maybe data payload that is registered to the blockchain with it, that kind of can like give a website inside, so to speak, like that'll give you, different
It's actually more of this, when you register a side chain, you don't have to have it
Before
yet.
you sell it, right? Then when you do that,
You go on like the, before you enter the market anyway.
You could change what's maybe you don't want hub, you
mean
put it
like
on the side chain,
like
then
that? And then if you make it a trade, even
Well,
though
they
they
do is
price
that
change,
the
you
previous
have
design
to
is
want
just
to
that
have
it
it
is linked to,
Okay.
like,
just pour stuff in the hall.
no, yeah, sorry.
And so you're sitting there going,
But yeah, the previous design, it just linked to, a zip file, like, you can register address of the blockchain,
Have y'all really
but like,
that the best option is to
it really, we like an IPFS layer for sort of.
investor? Is it like?
It was an absolute proof of concept that like, that was really that.
I did a lot of fake transactions on the test, and a lot of them just seem like illogical what you can do on there.
U.S. territory, so it doesn't,
It still
fall.
counts.
No, it's our own entity. What? Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, all those are their own entities.
Wait, and
They're not part of
isn't
it.
that where Ace does, they have the,
computer of the week. Super light.
All of my elements,
Hola, señor. Hola, ¿cómo estás? ¿Trabajo? Sí. Más o menos. Bueno. Gracias para tocar la basura. Ah, bueno. Correcto, mundo, tocar la basura. Is that what you say?
Sacar la basura.
Tocar.
Sacar.
Oh, saca la basura.
Sí.